Hey everybody. So if people are online, just let me know. Say something in the chat. So if you can hear me, see me, please let me know. Maybe just introduce yourselves. Anna, Mary, Marianne from the Big Island, Carolyn, Alina. I wish I could be on the Big Island right now. It's one of my favorite places. So, welcome. So a few more may be joining at some point. So also feel free to use this chat forum. If you have any comments to make, questions to ask, anything that feels important to share. Sabine Maya from Austria. Hey, good to see you. So Marianne says it's very crowded. Speaking of the Big Island, I'm so glad people are traveling again. Yeah. And hopefully, unrestrictedly, without any fancy paperwork, if you grasp what I mean. All right, so today I thought I might say a little bit about the journey of death and dying. There's several people in my life that have exited from this dimension recently. My aunt died a few days ago. Another of my friends took his own life. Someone else had advanced cancer. And many people are actually, making themselves really sick for whatever reason at this time. And it's happening all over the world. It's happening with a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And I'm not going to go into that so much, but just talk about the journey of death. What does that mean? What does dying mean, actually? Which aspect of us are we talking about? Which body are we talking about? Which dimension are we talking about? So it's much more complex than we tend to assume. Most of the time, people don't give much thought to death or to dying simply because it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's unknown, and therefore uncomfortable. So, yeah, and there's so many people who are going through this, and it can actually be very exciting and joyful if we're conscious of this journey. The same way that coming into this life can be exciting and joyful, a great big welcome. We continue this tradition of celebrating their birth every year on their birthday. And we sometimes tend to forget that the transition into another dimension from here can be equally a time of celebration, welcome, and joy. So let's talk about who we are. So Karen, Hatsi, Francesca, welcome. Yeah, so who are we? So actually we can talk about this from at least 3 different levels. So essentially who we are is spirit, universal consciousness, the one spirit that moves through all things and also resides beyond all things, outside of time, outside of space, in this primordial state of being. This is ultimately who we are, spirit, universal spirit. And then that universal spirit individuates as a spark of light to begin a journey of embodiment. So when that spirit embodies as a spark of light, enters into separate consciousness, you could say that is born into creation. That's the birth of the organism. It's not even yet human. So the organism is actually a stitching together of multiple bodies. So the first body to be created is the causal body. So this is a direct reflection of this individualized spark of consciousness. It's yet untraveled, unmanifest. It hasn't really explored or experienced creation. It's simply the beginning of a journey of exploration, of play, of joy. It's creator experiencing itself through creation. So this first body is known as the causal body. It's not yet embodied in physical matter. Then there's the body of the intellect, the body of the mind. And these are sometimes contradictory or paradoxical words. What do I mean by body of the mind? So these are, in the Hindu tradition, they're known as sheaths, S-H-E-A-T-H, or koshas. So there's the spiritual sheath, or the causal sheath, which is known as the Anandamaya kosha, or the body of bliss. And this is the realm where the soul, the individuated soul, enters from infinity. It enters this realm of individuated consciousness and then incarnates itself through a series of incarnations or lifetimes. It could be human, could be other species of animal, could be entire planets, whatever it may be. And in this, it gathers experience, which then imprints on a structure known as the psychic being, which then continues lifetime after lifetime, perfecting itself. So that first spark of the individuated soul lands within creation and begins its journey as a psychic being. And each time it enters into form, it creates for itself an intellectual body, a mental body, and a physical body. So the first two of those bodies, known as the Vijnanamaya kosha, the body of intellect, which is basically will and direction. It's like, what do I want to create? What's my purpose? How do I manifest this in creation? And then the mind body is our thoughts of feelings, emotions, how we bring those levels of awareness and will into one single functioning personality structure. Then it's time to create a physical body. So that happens with conception. First, there's a creation of what's called the etheric or prana body, using DNA from the parents, and that then progresses into the nadis, the chakras, and the physical systems of a physical body within the womb. So this physical structure is not yet individuated, in the sense it's not yet permeated with the intellect and the mind. It's still very much connected with source, with the psychic being. It doesn't have a way of communicating this, but it has a direct experience of this. So there's this vast oceanic consciousness, for the most part unconscious, in terms of our physical human being. So there's the physical body and the prana body that supports the physical body, also known as the etheric body. So the etheric body then merges pretty much with the physical body and creates it's also known as the vital body. It provides the life force. It provides the animation through which the physical body can think and move and feel and experience through senses, through thought, through the mind, experience this reality, enter into this reality, albeit in a very limited way, just simply because the soul, the psychic being or the soul, when it first enters, it's like entering into this spacesuit. Imagine an astronaut walking on the moon or out in space. It's not as fluid as an elastic body that an acrobat would use. It's very clunky. It's very unwieldy. So these bodies, these three lower bodies, four lower bodies, the physical, etheric, prana body, the mental, and the intellectual body. So, or you could call it the mental emotional body. These can only express a very partial manifestation of soul, of the psychic being. However, our journey as incarnated beings is to develop more and more fluidity, to be able to expand our perceptions, to be open to who we are as the essential self with a capital S, while at the same time experiencing our human incarnation and our spiritual identity. So this is our journey, and it takes many incarnations, and within any incarnation it takes a long time to enter into a path of mastery, and it continues on as far out as we wish to go. So what happens then between incarnations? So we've learned, we've come in with a set of directions for any given lifetime. We've contracted with things we wish to do, people we wish to meet, places we wish to go. And then it's the end of our life. We've completed our contract and it's time to leave. And what happens then? So when I say it's time for me or we to leave what and go where? So obviously, when a physical body dies, the person doesn't die, because the person simply moves to another expression of reality. And there's many people who've had near-death experiences where they find themselves leaving the physical body, maybe seeing the body from above, going off into other realms and dimensions, meeting loved ones, meeting beings of light, experiencing these extraordinarily beautiful gardens and landscapes, meeting aspects of themselves that have either moved on or that have never left, sometimes exploring dimensions that have never been explored before, and often going through what's called a life review. So you go through and review whatever you learnt from any given lifetime, the karmic lessons, the accomplishments, the failures, reflections about how you would like to change something for the upcoming lifetimes. And so you go through this life review. There's never any judgment. It's simply a way of understanding what your journey has been about and deciding where to move beyond. So yes, you as an entity, as a personality structure, leave the physical body and you're entering into the astral body. The astral body is the sum total of the etheric body, the mental body, and the emotional body. I'm just going to use those terms because those people can relate to more easily. So our personality structure. And this personality structure can then travel through many, many different layers of astral life, from hellish realms to heavenly realms, depending on what you wish to experience, what you wish to learn. So it may be that you spend some time in rather hellish realms to go through the consequences of certain decisions you made in your life. And then you advance, people come and greet you, you move on. It's all based on choice. It's all your ultimate decision. Nobody puts you into hell, puts you into heaven. It's a journey that you're on as an aspect of the divine. We're all aspects of the divine. We're all here to learn, to grow, and to embody. And then we continue on from the astral, higher astral realms into the causal body. So this is where the imprints of any given incarnation can be gathered into the causal body as a memory, a field. And at that point, you meet with your guides, your counsels, and choose what's next. So am I ready to go back to Earth at some point? Do I want to explore another dimension, another world, another planet? Do I want to experience a non-human incarnation? Do I want to go back as a human to complete certain karmic patterns? Do I want to basically come back in service as a bodhisattva? Because I'm done with the human cycles, with the karmic patterns. So all these choices are made. And then you just re-enter the same way as you did before. You create for yourself another set of bodies, extending into the physical, and then gradually begin to incarnate within those bodies. So we're not incarnated just because we're animating a physical body. We're incarnate only when the full potential of who we are as psychic being, as soul, is allowed to manifest through our senses, through the different levels of the mind, and through the different layers of the body. So remember, the vibrational frequency that we carry as an imprint of the soul manifests in the creation of subtle bodies. So your physical body also has different layers of functioning. So if your physical body is refined enough to be able to respond to etheric vibrations, to cosmic ray frequencies, to galactic superwaves, then you can receive this information more directly through source, through these intervening worlds, what the shamans refer to as the upper worlds or the lower worlds, and it becomes part of your conscious awareness, your waking consciousness. And maybe it takes time. Maybe it takes a little bit of practice and effort, clearing, in order to be able to fully open to that potential. When we do so, what our ultimate goal for any lifetime is to create a light body. So we have the physical body, which is this vehicle here. We have the astral body, which we enter into, and we drop this physical body between lifetimes. And then there's a light body that's eternal and infinite. So this light body is capable of traveling through dimensions at will. It's capable of manifesting into physical reality and then demanifesting into spiritual realities, going back and forth between dimensions just like that. Imagine Star Trek. You're entering into the, what's it called, the teleportation chamber. And, there's Scotty outside with his ability to beam you across to another dimension. And that's what we do. based on our connection with the psychic being, with the soul. We're always connected anyway with the self. We cannot be separate from the self. Even if we imagine that we are, even if our belief systems have created a barrier, we cannot be separate from the self, because that is our ultimate reality, our ultimate identity. And that self then manifests in individuated form as a psychic being which grows. So the psychic being, the soul, is capable of growth from life to life. So there's young souls, there's teenage souls. I mean, don't take it too literally. There's mature souls and old souls. And as we keep experiencing our journey life after life, we get to that point where in a single lifetime it becomes possible to go through this entire journey of embodiment, bringing infinite consciousness all the way in to create the light body, and to then move your awareness into the light body. So at this time, as long as we are what's called alive, our consciousness is present in the physical body. After we die, our consciousness moves into the astral body, other dimensions of life. Then this journey, whether we are in physical body or not, we go about creating the light body, transfer our consciousness into the light body. And at that point, there's no limitations. Then the soul body, the five bodies are merged together and stay merged together. And at that point, there's no need for physical death. You can translate yourself back and forth between dimensions, between worlds, according to will. Some people refer to this stage as Ascension, and people who have achieved this as Ascended Masters or Rainbow Masters or Light Masters. There's many different names for this. The Saptarishis in the ancient Indian tradition. So it's not one tradition. This is something that has been practiced forever. And it's within our capacity at this time in history, simply because this is such a unique time. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about the galactic superwave that's coming in. We've talked about the possibility of a micronova on the sun, which would obliterate much of life on the earth if we were not prepared for this, through fire, through ice. We've also talked about the shift in magnetic polarity on the earth. So it could be a 90-degree shift, could be a 180-degree tilt. So with the change of magnetic fields, there's a change in our relationship between these five bodies. So there's a potential, there's a high probability right now that as these things take place on terrestrial levels, this is imminent. We're not talking about decades or centuries in the future. We're talking about a few years from now, perhaps. The conditions are set for this. And we can go into that as we observe what's going on in the magnetic fields and the magma systems of the earth and so on. The climate changes. But at a certain point, we have the capacity through this ability to shift magnetic fields, or as the Earth's magnetic field changes, to be able to transfer our consciousness from the physical into the astral, into the causal body. So this is a potential to actually enter into the construction of a light body as an ascended master. You could also call it a descended master, depending on what your primary identity is that you feel yourself to be. So that's one level. So we're talking about death, we're talking about a transfer of consciousness. We're not talking about losing anything. We're not talking about leaving anything behind. You just leave physical matter behind so that you can enter into a much more subtle, refined body capable of experiencing more so than you could in your physical body. So your senses are much more open. Your sense of vision, of touch, of smell, of taste, of hearing, they're enhanced to levels that were not possible in a physical body. And so the reason you're in a physical body is to experience multiplicity and to experience separateness and division. And we'll come to why this is important. And then as you go back into an astral body and then on to the causal body, you're assimilating the learning of a lifetime. You're entering into a space of rest, welcome, joy. Uh, the Hindus refer to the causal body as the body of bliss, Ananda Maya Kosha, because at that, in that vibrational frequency, you do experience this state of bliss as your primary state, rather than sadness, grief, separation, fear, loss, shame. The narcissism that we've created for ourselves in this human identity, thinking that the whole world revolves around this tiny, limited, individual personality. So we are freer. So we go through these phases. We land in physical bodies, we go back into astral bodies, on into the causal body, back into the physical body, astral body, causal body, be creating new bodies each time we come in. And then the imprint of the whole incarnational experience remains within the causal body, which continues to grow in its ability as a psychic being. And eventually we go beyond the need for human incarnation. We incarnate perhaps as planets, perhaps as galaxies. We take new levels of responsibility, and you can begin to communicate across dimensions. So you are not just a personal self, you're also a planetary self. You are not just a planet, you're also a galaxy. You are the infinite universe. You are the self beyond time and space. So what's happening is that your sense of fixation in any one identity starts to shift. And so death is a gateway. And if we can walk through this gateway consciously, it's a joy. What are we afraid of when we die or someone close to us dies? We don't know what we're afraid of because we haven't experienced that yet. There's no one or not many people who can walk across that bridge and come back and tell the story. Now, due to medical technology, people are able to resuscitate people who have died, bring them back. So if their heart has stopped, if their breath has stopped, if their organs have failed, they go through clinical death. They leave the physical etheric body through the silver cord, enter into their identity within the astral body, experience those worlds. And then at some point you're told, okay, it's not your time yet. The doctors come bring you around, so it's time to come back and continue the same physical incarnation. But then you always come back with a greater sense of purpose, and there's never fear for death evermore, simply because you know that it's not an unknown space. It's beautiful, it's magical, it's a continuation. So with that awareness, what does that do to our journey on this earth? Not just as individual humans, but as a species. What does it mean that we are going through this time of collective shift? What does it mean that it appears to be quite stressful and dangerous and difficult? What does it mean that at the same time there's a very strong possibility that what appears to be dangerous, difficult, is simply the reaction of a certain force of light entering into this dimension to bring up everything that needs to be cleared out? Just like illness, when we have a fever that burns out any viruses or illnesses that we have invited into our physical systems. So what's happening with the enhanced embodiment of light, unified light, is that it's forcing everything that's not of light, all the shadows, up to the surface, to be seen, to be embraced, to be owned, to be released, and then you're free. Then you're beyond the polarity, the duality of dark and light. You're not identifying with one against the other. You've realized that you're both, all, and beyond any of that. And you are simply that. And in that knowing, there's freedom, because there's nothing to resist, nothing to fear, nothing to project, nothing to repress. You're just free to be who you are. And it's all okay, it's all beautiful. And that's when you actually recognize yourself as creator within creation, because it's all perfect. Anything that is still understood or perceived as imperfect is simply the mind trying to go through its clearing process. And there's much of that here on this earth. We're clearing lifetimes of old karma. We're clearing out centuries of human history where we have fallen into violence, oppression, greed, separation, and duality. And this is the matrix. And now it's time to climb out of the matrix, to swallow that red pill. And as you all know, that's not easy. The first thing is terror. You face terror. You're faced with an unknown, with a reality that is scary just because it's unknown. You trust something bigger than yourself, beyond yourself. That's when you connect with the soul. That's when you find your identity becomes the soul. And that becomes your journey into creating the light body and becoming multidimensional consciousness. At that point, you're no longer even human. You recognize your extraterrestrial roots, your inner terrestrial roots. You recognize your angelic roots, your galactic roots. We're so much more than we imagine ourselves to be. So physical death is simply a reminder. It's simply a step along this path. It's a huge, long, beautiful path. And if we can die consciously just as much as we've learned to live consciously, that can be a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, most times when there's fear of death, it also reflects the fear of life. I'm afraid to live consciously, and therefore I'm going to fear death because I don't trust the unknown. I don't trust aspects of myself beyond what I can see and perceive through these limited senses and mind. So that's the journey of death. And if we can let go of the fear, If we can let go of the fear, it also means that as we walk with others through this journey, we can hold a space for them where they can more easily, gracefully enter into their astral bodies and their causal bodies. I mean, obviously, it's once you're passing through the tunnel, you don't need any encouragement because it's such a welcome that you experience. I remember so many accounts of people that have progressed, not regressed, but progressed through hypnotherapy into the future, into that moment of their death, going beyond that, leaving the physical body, going through the tunnel, being welcomed, facing their true self as the light, being in this state of absolute wonder, where all your senses are completely wide open, so much delight and beauty, and then not wanting to come back until they eventually sent back. It's like, okay, you're not done here. Remember your contract, and then coming back with so much joy. Initially, sometimes people enter with a great deal of fears. Trepidation is like, what am I going to encounter? Am I ready for this? And then it's like, wow, I don't want to leave. It's so beautiful. And then the rest of your physical journey on earth is going to be a continuation of that. Yes, you're in a more limited sensory structure, but your mind has opened. Your spirit has expanded. You're no longer stuck in a limited shell of memory and of potentiality. So what happens often is that when we first enter into the physical body, we go through this veiling process and we forget. But when we go through this tunnel and then come back consciously, those memories can come back. And this often happens spontaneously with people, through dream states where you find yourself being guided out of your physical body. You're welcomed by beings that you recognize as guides or angels or loved ones who work with you. You may be connecting with aspects of yourself that are now ready to step in. And then you come back in with more purpose. You learn how to travel during your dreams so you can continue spiritual work on those levels and dimensions. You find that there's more and more of a resonance between those dimensions and the physical, which prepares you for being able to travel multidimensionally in your light body. So we're all preparing for this, and this, like I said, this lifetime, because of this magnetic excursion that we're going through, provides opportunities that we haven't had before, at least not for the last 12,000 years or so. So, yeah. So this is our journey on this earth, and so I started off talking about death and dying, but I can't really talk about that and not talk about what the bigger picture is, because otherwise it just becomes something fearful and limited. So death is actually a gateway. And in the Islamic tradition, they say that the angel of death is the most beautiful of all the angels. And that's a lot because people are afraid to go through that portal because of the fears around the unknown. And therefore he has to be beautiful, or she, to give you the kind of encouragement and confidence to be able to walk graciously. So this whole idea of death, is the symbol of with carrying the scythe and skull and crossbones. It generates a lot of fear. And this is what we've learned to respond in our collective consciousness to the idea of death. And it's really not necessary. So if we can sit with someone who's dying, who's open to experience this opening, it's beautiful. And whether or not they're mentally open, just the fact that you're with them and you are a portal allows this passageway to happen more easily. If you're at a distance, you can still connect with them with intention, through prayer, through sending out the beam of light which opens up this tunnel for them. Ilahinur, working with the Ilahinur energies, also opens up that doorway. So, and I think we're learning how to do this as, what's the word that the Native American people use? Dreamwalkers. We're learning to become dreamwalkers, so that when we're collectively going through this time of transition, which happens once every 12,000 years, we can support not just people going from the physical body into the astral body, but also those who choose to into the spiritual body, merging with the light body, entering into our ascension. So this is why we're here, and it's a tremendous gift that we're given. All right, so let me just quickly look at comments here. Okay, why do we have to experience a forgetting when we're in a new incarnation? I think it's primarily because we weren't quite ready to let go of our pain. Imagine playing hide and seek as a kid. It's no fun if you know initially where everyone is hiding. It's the act of seeking that makes it fun. And in a way, it's like forgetting allows us a new beginning. So if there's things that we need to learn again, or if we need to explore new aspects of something, then that forgettingness can become a gift. It's also becoming commonplace now that souls are coming in without the need to forget so much. Maybe a little bit, but not so much. And there's ways to support this. And especially for more advanced souls, that they're able to come in at birth more conscious and retain that consciousness. And often this also requires that their parents be at least relatively conscious. So at some point, I don't think we'll need to forget anymore. And as we begin to remember who we are, it's a forever journey. Then we don't have to come back in order to remember. And then the only reason for coming back would be to serve, to take delight in our creation. All right, so I'm just picking here and there. Does the soul enter the body at conception or later? I've heard different things about this. What it feels like is most of the time it's later, because the body is still developing. The nervous system, the nadis, the chakras, the physical organs are developing separately for some time. Then that's necessary. But for more advanced souls, they may want to partake in this development. They may want to directly work with these subtle bodies to bring through more awareness. So, if they're seers, they want to work with the subtle new neurology of the brain, if they're intuitively open and want to bring that gift through into this life, they may also want to work with the nadis crisscrossing across the different chakras. They want to work more directly with the subtle body as it forms. So not just the physical body independent of the subtle body, but both of them linked together, stitched together in a way that the prana body, the vital body, becomes a fluid vehicle for the higher bodies to come through. So I think this will become more and more of our ordinary experience in times to come, and especially after the magnetic reversal. At that point, we may not even need to come in through sexual relations. We can enter directly by just choosing, and then, very quickly manifesting the physical body in a matter of moments, rather than going through 9 months of steady, gradual development. So we just simply take atoms from all these different dimensions, focus them around the soul body, the psychic being, manifest the physical body with all functions intact and connected to each other. So this is part of what it means to be Homo Luminous, the divine human. Sri Aurobindo refers to the sun-eyed children of the new dawn. The prana body, the etheric body, is created from the elements of the sun. And that's why many yogis have discovered that by just gazing at the sun during the first hour after sunrise or the last hour before sunset, and gradually increasing the amount of time that you do this, you learn to sustain your physical body directly on prana. You don't need food. You don't even need liquid sustenance. You can receive everything your body needs from the sun. And this will become probably more and more commonplace as we go through these times, as we become more refined and connected through these subtle bodies. The film Core is a fascinating trip to the center of the earth. Yeah, thank you, Edith. I think I've seen that. It's magnificent. And there's also, of course, the stories from Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 40,000 Leagues Under the Earth. Francesca says, I'm reading the Dalai Lama's book on dying. To face and understand death is to have the awareness to live fully. Yeah. There's also a book by Sogyam Rinpoche on the Tibetan book of living and dying, which is excellent. Yeah, the awareness to live fully. This is, if some of you are familiar with the work of Carlos Castaneda, probably those who are older amongst us can remember those stories, and his experiences with the Yaqui shamans in Mexico. And one of the teachings from Don Juan, who was one of these Yaqui elders, was to keep death as an ally, always at your left shoulder, always present as a reminder, to show you your choices in life. So when you're aware of death as an ally, what does that mean? First of all, it means that you know that you're part of a cycle. You can embrace life and embrace death totally, and therefore embrace your divinity just as much as embracing your humanity. It also means that you're conscious of your choices, of the choices you make. The choices you make are not based on fear, based on greed, based on limited awareness. They're based on the entire cycle of existence. So it keeps you in touch with yourself. And especially during times when we get lost along the way. When this year for many of us has been quite intense. In some ways difficult, in some ways beautiful. And it's always been an initiation because we're here to learn about that. So to keep that as an ally at your left shoulder as we pass through these times can be a gift. Marianne says, wow, this talk is so dense with information. I'm going to have to rewatch it over 20 times and take notes for it to be properly digested and assimilated. Yeah, a lot of this, as I'm reflecting on this, the information comes. So it's not like, yes, I've done some research on this, but it comes together in new ways all the time based on my ability to grasp and understand. So, it's opening to awareness on different levels and through different levels of the mind. So the rational mind can pick up certain levels of information, and then the higher mind can pick up other levels of information. And then the illumined mind and the intuitive mind and the overmind, they're all able to grasp certain levels of information that the lower levels of the mind cannot. Eventually we connect with the unified mind, the source, and then we enter into the mind of the cells. This is the biological state of consciousness. It's not the same as the rational mind. It's an intelligence within the body. It's within the DNA. It's a powerful source energy of life, which for the most part isn't touched very much. And that's why we're so unconscious. Our bodies are so unconscious of who we are. But as we tap into these higher levels of the mind, bring that awareness all the way through these portals into the cellular levels of the mind, then we're preparing our bodies to become true matter. So what is matter? Is simply, matter and matter are all linked together. So matter is the embodiment of Divine Mother. Most of the time, we treat our bodies as dirt, not as a sacred embodiment of life. So if we can begin to reorient towards what our bodies really are as these exquisite vehicles for consciousness, capable of so much more than we've given them permission for. It's a magical thing. So yes, so this is part of what I'm discovering every time I begin to explore some of these realms. And also every time that someone close to me goes through this passage, whether I'm sitting with them directly or connecting through a distance. It's like it's a journey. It's a shared journey. And I look forward to a time when we'll be doing this collectively. It's going to be a powerful shared journey. What happens when the heart stops? The Merkaba is the connection between these subtle bodies. So these 5 bodies I mentioned, physical, etheric, mental, emotional, and causal, they're linked together through these sacred geometries known as the Merkaba. It's a very subtle, what's the word? Net isn't even the right, it's like a garment that connects these different bodies. garment isn't the right word, but whatever it is, they're connected through magnetic fields. When the heart stops, that Merkaba collapses, the magnetic links between these different bodies breaks down, and that's activates DMT within the pineal gland, within the brain, and that liberates the soul. And the soul then shoots out from the physical body along the silver cord. The silver cord breaks off. You enter into the astral body. You spend time in different dimensions, exploring where you need to do, what you need to do, where you need to go, people you need to meet. Eventually move on to the causal body, the causal worlds. Why did I start saying all this? Yeah, so we're doing this as a collective journey also. And that's what makes it so magical. So accompanying the earth, Mother Earth, on the same journey, we're leaving behind these bodies of physical matter, entering into a body of true matter, Gaia luminous. It's a different vibrational density, what some people call the fifth dimension, where you cannot hold on to the same level of duality as you've been used to. You're not experiencing yourself quite so separately from each other, from the world around you, as you have in the past. You're opening to something wider and beyond. And this is a collective event. So this is part of the ascension journey of Gaia herself. And we are participating in this, so we can be midwives as well. So we are part of Gaia, and we're also midwives with Gaia. So precious journey and a wonderful time to be here. So thank you, Marianne. Okay, is there a false light newly departed souls are attracted to? Yeah, I know some people have talked about this. I heard something from Simon Parkes about this once, and other people. I have a different sense about this. How can there be false light when you're talking about soul? When your intention is clear, when you're reconnecting with the soul, that would be pretty pathetic if the soul decides, okay, sorry, here's a detour, here's a diversion. Yes, it is true that we might choose to come back into incarnation, but we don't come back prematurely. It's not like an abortion, bang, bang, you're out. It's not a punishment. It's more like, you choose the time of your incarnation. You choose the time of your return. You choose the circumstances. You choose to go through it gracefully with people who can guide you, support you. It's an honorable journey. So this talk about a false light doesn't really sit well with me. We may choose at some point, okay? So it's not the tunnel that goes straight up into the causal body. We may spend some time in the astral body for a while. Most people will. And most people need to be able to assimilate the learning. Some people may not need to. Some people may feel like, okay, that they can go right up to the causal body and come right back in, with a new mission. It's like you completed one mission, go back in for the next one immediately, because you're that kind of soul. You're not doing this for your own karmic journeys. You're doing this as your planetary mission. So Jojo says, I read the Carlos Castaneda books too when I was traveling years ago. I really want to go back and look at those. Sometimes you get new insights every time you go through, and it's been years since I last looked at them. Yeah, thank you. I was worried I might choose the wrong way. Yeah, sorry, there's no wrong way. So don't worry. I think that's when we are caught up in that fear of choosing the wrong way. This is what the religions do. You're going to go to hell, you're going to go to, the lower bardos or whatever. and someone else is going to make you do that. And so you spend your whole life in fear and guilt and shame, and that lowers your frequency. It lowers your connection with your psychic being and with Source. So there's no wrong way. Even though we learn sometimes through failure, through mistakes, through pain, it's not wrong, ultimately. It's a path. And even if we do that as a collective humanity, it's not wrong. It's just a path. And next time we come around, do it differently and do it way better. And we've gone through these cycles over and over again. Now we've come back 12,000 years later. It's not going to be the same. Atlantis fell and was covered by the waves. It doesn't have to be the same way this time. We can have different choices. We are making different choices. We already have made certain choices that are quite different. And I trust that this will be so, that this will be the unified light coming in, what Sri Aurobindo calls the supramental consciousness, is already strong enough that we don't need to split ourselves again when we start over. So this time it can be like, we integrate and then move up. Rather than collapse and break down, we integrate and move forward. Laurie Ladd says, energy doesn't lie, so false light seems to be a contradiction. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? So how can light be false? How can anything be false except in our perception of it? It's our perceptions that can be false because we've bought into a compromised belief system, a conditioning that we call duality. So duality is that perception of duality is the problem. Physical matter is not a problem. Our bodies are not a problem. Density is not a problem. It's our perceptions that create that illusion that's the problem. So we're breaking through. We're breaking free. It's happening. The cords that have kept us trapped in density are being released now. And if you want to know how and why that is so, I will say that much of it has to do with the releasing of satanic cords that have been created through much of the child trafficking and satanic cults on this planet for the last several hundred years. That's ending. And that's the main reason I feel whatever is going on politically and economically or spiritually or psychologically or socially or whatever, that is the control frequency that has kept us trapped in duality. These rituals that have bound us through dark magic to the veils within matter, where we've forgotten who we are. Matter is not bad, it's not evil, but there's veils within matter where we've created the illusion of separation and become lost. And those veils are now breaking. We're breaking free. Okay, back to Imogen. Clear and interesting, thank you. Are we all supposed to be given this information, or have we earned this privilege? And then Sushiana says, what wonderful stuff. Amen. I think this information is out there for any of us to receive. It's there in all the traditions. And maybe the slight differences, in the details, depending on what tradition you look at. But when it comes through your own inner knowing, as you learn to open the doors and travel between the worlds, then that information is not just a mental concept. Because mental concepts are always fraught with uncertainty and ultimately fear. But when it becomes your knowing, this is who you are, this is who I am, the fear is gone. And then you see things differently. You see and feel and experience these interconnections. You open the gateways between worlds more consciously. You learn to work with the chakra systems, the nadis, more gracefully. It becomes easier. You learn to work with the prana, with ether, being able to absorb that nourishment directly from the ethers around. If there came a time when we didn't have access to food, or if there came a time, which may be soon, that we cannot travel without papers, then we just learn how to do that. We've already accomplished that in the past, and we're simply reopening those doorways. So those doorways are inside us. The Merkaba is inside us. We're just simply learning or relearning how to open our access to this now. Yeah, and, at some point I do want to, have a space where we can gather together physically and practice these things, support each other. Learning to transform our bodies into light, working to release the attachment to food and outer dependencies, to work with internal technology rather than external technology. This is part of the new earth. So we're creating these little Gaia's gardens where we can practice. And as we practice together in smaller groups, that can then be transmitted out into larger groups, and ultimately the whole species consciousness and Gaia consciousness. By the way, if you'd like to learn more about this, I've written a few books. The last two, Gaia Luminous and Homo Luminous. Gaia Luminous referring to what this new earth is about and how we can consciously begin to achieve that. And then Homo Luminous is practices for developing our own light bodies. So working with Ilahi Nur, working with the Inca Andean practices, so we can actually build the tree of life to activate the Merkaba. So good to hear this cleansing is happening. Sending blessings and thanks for that release. Thank you. Lorna says, I'm elated. Every day begins with a burst of realization I'm on a planet hurtling through space. I'm a Jodi. So naught else matters is grand. Absolutely, nothing else matters. Yeah, there's no wrong way. We can do it consciously or we do it unconsciously, but we do it. And then Elizabeth says, the turtle is my guide on my path. She opens doors to the source. So great to receive your wisdom. Well, the turtle represents, in some Native American traditions, she represents Gaia, Mother Earth. All right, guys. So this is more of a talking meditation today. So thank you for joining me. And I also plan, I've planned to put the word out. I'm lazy sometimes. I don't do this so easily when it's up to me. But I was planning to maybe start a series of webinars in April. And I'm just too lazy to organize it, to put it all together. And I know some of you have been interested to follow up and participate. So, if you haven't sent me an email about it, please do. If you have, you might still want to send another one because, organizational abilities get a little bit on the weak side sometimes. So maybe starting next month sometime, we'll try and look for a time when we can, which is convenient for people in different time zones. All right, guys. Thank you for sharing this time with me. So blessings and love. And please feel free to share this with others as well. That's what it's about.